Cloud architecture diagramming. Let's take a look at it. Today we're going to take a look at cloud architecture diagramming, specifically with the AWS platform, but the principles that we will be discussing here can really be applied to any cloud platform. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is open a web browser, type inside the Google search bar, AWS architecture icons, right? Google returns some results. What we want to do is click on the AWS architecture icons here. It's going to bring us to an AWS web page that houses the architectural icon information. Now, you can download the specific icons individually onto your computer in kits, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to go down here and we're going to choose a drawing tool that's going to help us create our diagrams. And as you can see, there's quite a few to choose from, 15. I'm familiar with Lucidchart, Draw.io, and Glyphy. For this tutorial, we're going to use Draw.io. And so what you want to do is click Draw.io and it will open Draw.io directly up for you. Now you can also download a desktop version that you can install on your computer and it'll just always be on your desktop for you. But either way, this is gonna work for you. As you can see, we've got a blank canvas here and we've got a whole bunch of stuff on the left navigation panel and we've got a whole bunch of options on the right navigation panel. Across the top, you have your usual options bar, toolbar. It has all the usual file, import, open, save your document. You can go through and arrange your workspace, rotate it, reverse it. All of your usual options are here across the top. Go all the way down to the bottom where it says more shapes right here. Click more shape. And if you go scroll down, you can include more shapes and more options for your diagramming. And so AWS 19 is the latest AWS icon version, but if you want, you can also check 17 and 18. We'll leave those. But as you can see here, they've got Azure, Cisco, IBM, all kinds of icons that are related to different platforms that you can use to create your diagrams, right? So we've got AWS 19 check. We're gonna say apply, and then it's going to apply it over here. And then we just go through and start looking for what we want. So we can go compute, gonna show us all the compute icons, EC2 types and everything here. If we went to containers, gonna show us all the container icons. Now, you can individually go through, look at all the icons and manually click them and drag them where you want. Or if you don't want to do it that way, you don't want to look through the icons, you can always go up here and just search shape. So whenever you start your diagram, the first thing you're going to start with typically is your AWS cloud account environment. So what we're going to do is, if you look under AWS groups, you'll see all of the different ones: region, cloud, availability zone, security groups, so on and so forth. You can go up here to the search bar and type in what you need. So if you're looking for an internet gateway, for instance, you could type in gateway and it'll show you all the different types of gateways. If you wanted a VPC, type in VPC, it'll show you all the different kinds of VPCs, and so on and so forth. So for ease, I like to look at the little groups. And so the first thing you always want to do is start with your AWS cloud account. When you click it, it'll show on to your canvas. You grab it in the corner, move it up to where you want it, right? So we're gonna make our view about 75% so we can see the whole page. Let's do 50. All right, now we can see the whole page. We're going to take our AWS cloud icon and we're gonna grab one of the corners and we're gonna drag it open, right? So everything you build architecture-wise fits inside an individual account. When you go to AWS and you start creating instances, you start creating stacks and you start creating architectures, you're doing that inside what? Your AWS account. So at least this is the way I do it. Other people, once you become more advanced, you don't need to go through step by step and do all of this, but this also helps people who may not be as advanced as you visualize what's going on. So we've got our AWS cloud here, right? We're going to begin with taking a look at a single tier design, right? If I go up here and I type in text, I get a choice of some text I can add to my diagram. So I'll choose title. Gonna move this up a little bit, double click it. I can type in what I want. So I'm gonna say single tier, right? And whoops. That's not right. There we go. Single tier design, right? Because this is going to be a single tier design. Now, single tier design usually means that all the services and levels of operation are on a single machine or instance. Everything is in one tier. So, okay, now as was stated before, you always start with your AWS cloud. We got our AWS cloud account. This is our account. If we wanted to change the name of this, we could just double click that name and we'd say my account, right? Hit enter. Now it's my account. Now we know it's my account. Okay. First thing we want to do is select what region that we're going to be deploying our resources, right? So we got to have a region. If we look in groups, we find the region, click it, we can bring it in here. So next thing you need is a VPC, right? And if we look in groups over here to the left, there's VPC, we can drag it in here. Now, your VPC spans across availability zones, right? We can name this my VPC, and we can name the region North America, EU, whatever region we're in. If we go to groups, we find the availability zone, click it, we have it right here. So boom, now we have, this is where we're going to deploy all of our resources, and we'll call this one US East-1. Because I'm in the US, I'm closer to the East 1. This is the availability zone. I choose to deploy my resources. So we're going to go over here to groups and we're going to look for a subnet. Now, a subnet is by default private. It becomes public when you add an internet gateway. But when you're building architecture and you know a particular subnet is going to be a public subnet, you have the ability to just click public subnet. And so you can keep your visualization separated. So we're just going to boom. Okay, so we got our AWS account in whatever region we're in, our VPC in our availability zone we've chosen to operate out of, and we've got our subnet, which is going to be a public subnet. We want to deploy an EC2 instance into this public subnet here. So we're gonna put in a little EC2 instance right here. Now, by this being single tier architecture, our web server, we've got our compute, obviously, because it's a server, so that's also on here. And we've got our database. Our database instance is also on the same server. So all of our stuff is on this single server. And this is single tier architecture. If anything happened to this server, all of those services, all of those service levels will go down. So the server went down, our users can't access our web content, our applications can't access our database, and there is no compute to speak of happening, right? Now, say for instance, we had other applications that were using this database. When this and the database is on this server, when this server go down, and we've got applications maybe on a different server that uses this database, guess what? Those applications are going to be down as well because the database is down because it's on single. So this is not decoupled. This is monolithic and it is not highly available, right? You're going to have an internet gateway. So if we said gateway and we found an internet gateway and we brought it and we put it right here, because you've got a public web server, right? You got a public server here and you want people to be able to access content from the internet, and that's kind of what it looks like. Now, if we wanted redundancy, we can also make this a little more redundant by just simply, if we took this and we duplicated it, boom, over here. So we got another availability zone. Let's say this one's gonna be US East 2, right? Or 1A, this one would be 1A, this one would be 1B, whatever, or 2, right? We got the same public subnet. If I can get it, we're gonna duplicate that. Over here, we got the same EC2 instance with the same web server, applications, database instances. Everything's the same. Everything's the same, right? On both of these. But we got a load balancer. We can do application. We got a load balancer in here, right? And this is how we're gonna make ourselves more redundant, because we're gonna have some failover going on. And we could even put an auto scaling group down here that says if this server goes down, we got the load balancer that's going to reroute the traffic over to this server, and we got an auto scaling group that's gonna rebuild this server while all the traffic is being routed here. When the new one comes up, we can route the traffic back to that one, and that be the primary, and this always be failover, or we can leave this one, make that one however we want it. And that's how we would build in more availability on a single tier kind of architecture design, right? You know, there's a lot more that's going to go into this, route tables, routes, and so on and so forth. But right now I'm just trying to teach you the basics so you can wrap your head around it, because I know sometimes it can be hard. This was single tier architecture. Let's move right on to the next. And this time we're going to do a 3-tier architecture. And this still falls under multi-tier architecture, but this is going to be 3 tiers. We're going to go here. We're going to type text. We're going to choose our title text, and we're going to say 3-tier design, right? 3-tier design. We're going to bring that up and center it like so. Now, let's start building our 3-tier design here, right? And so we're going to have a presentation layer, tier 1, a logic layer, tier 2, and a database layer, tier 3. Now we can have 2 database layers, and that would be 4 tiers. We can have 2 presentation layers and 3 database layers. So, I mean, it'll be multi-tier. It can go on and on. You can mix and match these. This is just an overall understanding of the design aspect of tiered architecture, right? Okay, so let's go. What do we need first? We need our AWS account. Our cloud account, right? I'll go ahead, I'll drag her open. And this is just one way to do this. You actually don't necessarily have to put the box here. You can just set up your diagram with the knowledge that obviously it's in an AWS account, obviously it's in a VPC, obviously it's gonna be in a subnet, and you can just lay out the icons of the resources that you're going to use and how they're interconnected, and you don't have to do all of the structure. But this is a tutorial on how to understand the basic design aspects of architecture. So that's what we're doing here. And we got our cloud account. What do we need next? We need a VPC, right? So let's put us a VPC in here. Let's drag it on out. Inside here, we got our VPC. And what do we need next? We need availability zones, right? So let's do, and we want to always make sure that we've got redundancy and failover. So we're gonna do another availability zone. Let's go ahead and delete that. Over here, this is gonna be 1A, and this is gonna be 1B. You can also have multiple regions. So if you were building an overall design for a solution, you'd have your AWS account, you'd have a region here, a region there, a VPC here, a VPC in this region, and then separate your availability zones out from there, and so on. So, and you'll learn that as you become more familiar with AWS and architecture and cloud architecture and design and so forth. Right now, we're gonna separate this into 3 tiers, right? So we're gonna do, let's get some subnets here. So we got a public subnet. This is our presentation layer. This is the user facing, and it's gonna have our web servers in it, right? So let's go ahead and get us a EC2 instance so we can demonstrate our web server. And we're gonna just plop that in there. Now we can change this to, this is gonna be public subnet. We're gonna say pub 1, right? And then we're gonna do a logic layer, and that's going to be a private subnet. So we private subnet here, I'll bring her over here. And this one is going to be priv1, all right? And then we're gonna do another private subnet, bring that, This one's gonna be priv2, right? And so now you can see the 3 layers. We got the presentation layer, we've got our logic layer, and we've got our database layer. And we're gonna do EC2 instances, and here we're gonna do database instances in here. We're gonna duplicate this architecture over to another availability zone so that we can have failover, high availability. We've decoupled our architecture by splitting it in layers, and we've made high availability because we've copied it over here into our other availability zone. And this is a 3-tier design. Now we're gonna have, in order for this to work, obviously we're gonna need an internet gateway. We might use Route 53 for DNS, and we might use an Amazon CloudFront service to tie it all together. Put an application load balancer in here to route our traffic for failover, and boom, everything is beautiful, right? So that is an example of a multi-tiered design. All right, the next type of design I'm going to show you here, and really quickly, because I know this video is probably getting kind of long here. Let's go ahead, and this is going to be serverless. Okay, serverless design. And no matter whether you're doing tiered architecture, serverless microservices, whatever it is, guess what you're always going to start with, right? That's correct, your AWS cloud account, right? And guess what you always gonna have after that, right? Correct. It's always gonna be based in one region or another, right? Some of the resources and services you use will have to be based in a VPC, but not all of them, and not necessarily, right? You might use, and so we're not using any EC2 instances for this. This is completely serverless. And let's just kind of start to build a little bit so you can get an idea of what this is gonna look like. So I'm gonna go up here, and I'm going to first type CloudFront. Let's put CloudFront in here. Boom. So we might use AWS Certificate Manager here. I'll say boom, API Gateway is gonna be here. Inside these here. Lambda. I use a Lambda instance somewhere. Right in here somewhere. Put a database instance in there. Okay, so this is, kind of like the basics of a serverless design. You've separated your layers. You got your storage, you got your database, you got Lambda handling all the compute, and all of this is like mostly fully managed resources. You don't really have to do anything. It's all going to be taken care of. And so, in fact, it is a lot more complicated than what I'm showing you here, but in the interest of time and simplicity, I just wanted to stick to the architectural side and show you what this is going to look like and how you would be setting that up. And that is going to be it for the AWS architectural drawing design tutorial. I hope this has been helpful. If you are not already subscribed to this channel and you value the content that you've been seeing on this channel, or you even got some value out of this particular piece of content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. New content is being dropped all the time, And do us a favor, hit the like button so we can get these videos in front of those who may find them beneficial. And until the next video, Tech Fam, peace.